Hello and welcome to LionWing Talks, a show where I discuss all things LionWing, tabletop games, Japanese games, and localization. I'm Bradley Hailstorm, founder, president, CEO of LionWing Publishing. This is episode 38 of LionWing Talks for March 19th, 2024. Hey, thanks for checking us out. Thanks for joining us. If this is your first time joining us for LionWing Talks, welcome. If you are a returning veteran of the show, welcome back. We've been doing the show since February of 2021. So just past the 3-year mark last month. Now, I wish I could say that I was consistent with these shows these days like I was in the beginning, but I'm not. But I'm here tonight, and I'm excited to be here. I want to talk about last week's showcase. That was kind of a big deal. I saw we've got some questions in Discord. And I want to finally reveal the mysterious LWM that has been in the server and the side channel for, I don't even know how long at this point. Lots of speculation about what that means, and I'll be talking about what that is here in just a few minutes. So, oh boy, last week, kind of a busy week. It's been kind of a busy week for me. So if you missed it, we had our first ever showcase event last week where we announced 5 games. That's the first time I've ever announced more than one game. I don't know if I will ever announce 5 games again, all at the same time. That was crazy. Really cool experience, great learning experience. I'm glad I can say I did it. I think next time I might keep the showcase to like 3 announcements. It was just, it was wild. And the magnitude of some of those announcements, I think probably made it even more overwhelming to deal with. So in the showcase, as I'm sure you've heard if you're watching this show, we announced, the internet's worst kept secret, Shin Megami Tensei, the role-playing game, Tokyo Conception. So we announced that at the showcase, but we also announced Where's Blade, which is a retro Japanese TTRPG from the 80s and 90s. We are remastering that game, we're translating it, and we're bringing it to English for the first time ever. So Where's Blade and Shin Megami Tensei, the role-playing game, kind of anchored that showcase. We kicked off with Where's Blade. I gave a false finish before finally revealing Shin Megami Tensei, which was kind of fun. And then in between, we announced some cool projects, including our next Kickstarter, Kedamono Opera, an upcoming crowdfunding campaign for Kradia, Wild Hunt Festival Dankai Survey Brigade, which is a brand new standalone expansion, along with the anniversary edition of the original game, which is an updated and upgraded version of our most successful board game. So that's cool. And then we also announced our LionWing Quickplay series and the first entry in that series called Steamboat Riders. I'll be talking about these things tonight. I'll be answering any questions you've got about these projects tonight that I can talk about. I'm not going to let the cat out of the bag on all of these things, but I will peel the curtain back a little bit. Big announcements, right? It's very challenging to announce that many things and to make sure that each of those projects gets the love, the time, the attention that they deserve. I mean, Where's Blade? That's a big project. Like from a workload standpoint, it's huge, but also in terms of this kind of retro Japanese TTRPG coming to the West, that's never really been done before. So I definitely wanted to make sure that it did not get overshadowed by Shin Megami Tensei. There definitely was a chance that everything got overshadowed by Shin Megami Tensei. I am happy to say that did not happen, though. That the other games that were announced in the showcase were not forgotten about. They were not overshadowed. Certainly Shin Megami, I think, got the lion's share of the attention, but then a good amount of attention went to some of those other titles. So that was great. We anchored the show with 2 big titles and then plenty in between. But I don't want to do it again, ever, ever. The amount of coordination that went into that showcase, not just the showcase that you saw, and not just the after show that you saw if you tuned in for those things, but we then had to send out press releases on all of those games. We had to send out a compilation press release that had just small blurbs about each of those games. We had to put up blog posts about those games. We had to put up news articles on our website on those games so that we could link those news articles in our press releases, especially the compilation press release. That was a condensed version of everything. And it was like, hey, if you want to read more about Kedamono Opera, click this link, go to the news article on the LionWing website. It was a whole thing. And then, of course, each game got its own press release. It was a huge undertaking. It went off really well, though, I think. I mean, we've gotten really good feedback on it. Those types of events don't happen a ton in the tabletop gaming space. They certainly don't happen very often at all for small-time publishers. So it was cool to be able to do that. Great experience. Had a lot of fun once, I was in it. But the legwork to get there was not fun. I have to admit, it was not fun. But that day, finally pressing play and running the event, and then being the after show, that was fun. So we're a week removed from that, almost exactly a week removed. So SMT is our best-selling game yet. It's been up for pre-order for 7 days. It's done pretty much more sales than all of our previous games combined. Actually, I had high expectations for the project. I would not have put all the resources, financial and otherwise, into the project if I didn't think that it was going to be successful. I didn't quite expect it to. I didn't I didn't expect the turnout to be as strong as it has been. So that's been really cool. It's been really validating. With IP stuff, you you just kind of hope for the best because IPs can make or break companies. Getting into IP games is very expensive, very expensive. There's a reason why like the video game space is talking about getting away from IP projects because the licensing rights are just, astronomically high. And big companies can absorb those things. Small companies like LionWing cannot. So it was one of those situations where I was definitely taking a risk here, and it was like, I hope this works. I got like everything's wrapped up in this project, and so people have definitely showed up more than I expected. So I hoped for the best, and I got way more than that. So it's been awesome to see. Really excited about the future of Shin Megami Tensei, the role-playing game, and what we have planned for the future and all that good stuff. Right now, though, we're just focusing on what's in front of us, and that's Tokyo Conception. There has been a lot of conversation, YouTube comments, Facebook comments, in the Discord, on social, people saying, awesome, I just pre-ordered it, I love this, and when can we get the other books? Which I love the enthusiasm, right? Part of me is like, well, let's just focus on the book that we haven't gotten yet. But I understand what it's like to have a franchise you really care about, that you really believe in, and you get introduced to it in this new way, that in a way that you've never gotten before. We've never got one of the Shin Megami Tensei role-playing games over here before, so people are very excited to get this new type of Shin Megami Tensei medium. And so it's just natural that people are like, all right, cool, now let's get the rest of the games. And me too, I'm thinking like, all right, let's get the rest of those games. But to make that happen, and I've said this in Discord and other places, you got to let your voices be heard, honestly. Like you hear people say that all the time, like, hey, if you want something, if you want change, like voice what you want to the people that can allow that change to take place. And I don't know, you hear that so often, and oftentimes it's about these big things or big issues or big companies, and you're like, is my voice really going to be heard here? This would be an opportunity, I think, where your voice would be heard. So if you want more SMT RPGs, let Atlas know about it. Tweet at them, send them an email, however you got to get a hold of them, make it happen. Obviously, when we first started working on this project, like when we were negotiating for the rights and whatnot, which was back in 2021, obviously, as a guy who owns this company, I'm always thinking like, what is my tail on these projects? Like, is it a long tail, is it a short tail? With something like the SMT series, there's a ton of books. I mean, the first book kicked off in 1994, right? And went through the mid 2000s, basically. Lots of content there. So when I was talking with Atlas, obviously maybe not obviously, I lobbied first for Nocturne, for Tokyo Conception, the book that we got. It made the most sense as a starting place. People know Nocturne in the West. That was logical to me. But of course, as I'm talking to them about this, and especially once we got deep into negotiations and it was clear that this was going to happen, that's when I started kind of like peppering in like, and by the way, there's this supplement and there's also like 15 other books. Let's all make money here, right? Like, you don't have to do anything. These are books that already exist. This isn't like a new product that we are creating from the ground up that you have to like really oversee and have an active role in. Like, these books have existed. People at Atlas and Sega know of these books, although these books were, made a long time ago. A lot of the same people who are in Atlas and at Sega, believe it or not, in the 90s are still there in many capacities. So, when we're talking with Atlas, there were people there who were familiar with these books. And of course, there were people there who had no idea about these books, including their lawyers. But as I was talking to them, it was like, I think this is going to do really well. I think people are going to like this. There's nothing really like this out there. So like, let's run with it. This makes sense. It makes like, this is easy for you. You don't have to do a whole lot. I just basically, you get paid from me. I sell books. You get a royalty. Boom. This is like passive income for you. And the pushback that I got at the time was like, hey, all the other books are based on SMT 1 and 2. We've never released those in the West. So we don't think people would want to play those games because they're attached to games that people don't know. And my rebuttal to that was like, totally get where you're coming from. I think you are underestimating people's willingness and desire just to play in the SMT universe in this new way, this way that can only be accomplished by a tabletop role-playing game. And they don't care if it's based on a game that they haven't played before. It's Shin Megami Tensei. They can quickly acclimate because they know generally what Shin Megami Tensei is all about, whether they played the first, second, or any of the ones that came out to the West. And then I said, and also, it might be a little naive to think that people haven't played SMT 1 and 2, even though there's not an official way to play it. So, like, there are a lot of these products are going to be marketed toward, like, the SMT fan base. And if I had to guess, a lot of them have already played those games. But definitely there was some very understandable trepidation there of like, yeah, like, okay, I get what you're saying, but Bradley, I'm not convinced you're right. So the way we convince them that I'm right here is that we just let them know we want these games. We want these books. And you can play an active role in that by reaching out to them. So that's a little bit about SMT. I have not been keeping an eye on the chat. Let me do that now. And yes, I do have a special cup this go around, actually. It's my Kingdom Hearts mug. What's in it? It's for you all to decide. Okay. Let's catch up here. So I got some new faces in the chat, people I haven't seen before, which is always very cool. Thanks for checking this out, where I just ramble for a long time. You'll get bored of me eventually, and then you'll just sign off silently, and that'll be okay. I'm glad you came for a little while at least. So let's see here. It was circulating, Tokyo Conception we're talking about here, in the SMT community sphere ever since we first got wind of it. Was happy to see it officially announced. Yeah, so I kicked off the broadcast by saying, who says that? I kicked off the show saying that the Tokyo Conception was like the internet's worst kept secret. It totally was. Got leaked a bunch of times. It was really interesting. We've never... like, no one's even cared about us enough in the past to like want to like find out what we're working on before we announce it. Like, certainly, don't get me wrong, like LionWing has an awesome fan base. People have been around since the beginning. People who came in the middle love our stuff. But like, we were not at a point where people were digging or anything like that to try to figure out what we were working on. So it was a really interesting experience because I hadn't experienced that before with LionWing. So I had many a conversation with myself about, okay, what do I do here? Do I like subtly acknowledge it? Do I outright deny it? Do I have a little bit of fun with it? And I think I ultimately decided, if you're plugged into the LionWing community, you probably would have seen that I ultimately decided to have a little bit of fun with it. In the last LionWing Talk show, actually, where I just played really dumb. Like, I didn't even know what Shin Megami was half the time. So I didn't really know how to handle it. But it was kind of validating that people, when the leak came out, there was a lot of excitement around it. So pretty early on, back in December, I kind of knew, like, okay, like, people want this. I was hoping people wanted it. I thought people wanted it. I was pretty convinced they wanted it, but then to see the leak happen and people get excited, it was like, oh, okay, like, this is actually going to help me go into the official announcement feeling way more confident in what we're doing here. You know, so much of when you're running a small business, small publishing company is like, you just hope that the stuff you release is cool enough that people care. You know that not everyone's going to care about all the things you release. And you know that, like, you're not always going to hit the exact target you want to hit. You hope that you kind of get close to what you want to hit. But like, not every game is going to be like a banger. Not every game is going to be something that gets people really excited. You just hope that you have more. You just hope that you have more bangers than non-bangers. And this was one of those times once it leaked where I was like, okay, I think we got a banger here. So yes, it was one of those things of what do I do with it? And, I just kind of sat on it. We didn't do anything with it. We pulled down the listings. Obviously, there are a bunch of boring contractual things that basically say, that ultimately dictate what you can and can't do in those situations. Big contracts with Sega and, NDAs, and when you got a big publisher or a big distributor like we do, like there's a lot of red tape. So things had to happen. Product listings got pulled down, they got changed. They kind of became blank slates. So it's probably a little confusing for people there for a hot minute, where people were like, what is going on here? But there was nothing really we could do about it, and I couldn't talk about it. So I thought it would be fun at the showcase, though, to have that false ending where, like, we announced Kedamono Opera and we're like, hey, that's our last project. Thanks so much. Join us for, the LionWing Showcase 2 in a couple months this summer. We'll see you next time. And it looks like it's going to end, and it's like, hold on, wait a second. Just kidding. We got another one for you. I think we actually caught a couple people flat-footed on that one, so it was good. That was fun. Let's see here. Looking back at the chat. Yeah. Someone said I'd play anything SMT. I'm the same way, and I really tried to emphasize that. And it felt strange that I was emphasizing what I felt like they probably already know. But it was one of those things where it's like, people just want to play Shin Megami stuff. They don't care what it's attached to, and if they played the thing it's attached to or not. It's Shin Megami. It's not like there's huge wild differences in theming and tone between all the games. So a Shin Megami game is a Shin Megami game is a Shin Megami game. So anyway, I agree. I'd play anything related to it. Maybe the books can open the way to remakes and ports in English. Hey, you never know. I mean, that would be wild. I would gladly take credit for that. A special drink to unlock the darkness in your heart. I like that. That's poetic. Churcher. Do you really want darkness in my heart? Too late. It's already there. I hate to break it to you. Let's see here. It's greatest Shin Megami game is coming. Isn't in my wheelhouse. Never played the video games. Don't know the franchise details. My interest is 200% on Where's Blade. Been following it for 36 years. Okay, so Barking Alien, I'm wondering, were you the person on the Where's Blade trailer who had some expletives in there that YouTube tried to filter out of the comments, and basically you're like, hey, you have a fan site or something dedicated to Where's Blade? What's funny, if that is you, that's really awesome. Glad you're here. What's funny is, I had already visited that site. So whether you're in this chat and I'm talking to you right now, or you're the person who made that comment and I'm talking to you on playback, I had already visited that site. So you linked it and I was like, oh yeah, I know this one. So very cool though that Barking Alien, I like that name. You've been following it for a long time. I love that you're 200% all in on Where's Blade. That was that's the magic of a showcase. Not every game is going to be for everyone. I don't expect that. I'd love that to be the case. That'll never be the case. So you're like the perfect example of this. Shin Megami's not your thing, but Where's Blade totally is. So I'm glad that we were able to offer that for you. I said in the after show that it's always been important for LionWing to offer a diverse catalog of games so that we've got something for everyone, no matter what you're into. And the showcase kind of embodied that. I chose 5 games that I felt were all very different. Different mechanically, different tonally. In some cases, Wadon Festival, a totally different medium. So knowing that someone's going to come in there and they're going to be like, that's not for me, that's not for me, that's not for me, that's not for me, that is for me. And so long as someone liked one of those projects in there, that's a win in my book. So I'm glad you liked Where's Blade. Okay, so it was you. That's awesome. I'm glad we're connecting right now. It's a cool little full circle moment. Yeah, if I remember your blog, you cover a lot of different things. Did you cover other Japanese RPGs? I admittedly I haven't been to that blog in a long time. But I definitely looked at it very early on when I was considering Where's Blade. So what's funny about Where's Blade? So Where's Blade is kicking off our Legends of Japan product line. And our Legends of Japan product line is just us translating, remastering, and releasing games, Japanese TTRPGs that were released before the turn of the century that never got official English releases. So we're like going back in time, retro JTTRPGs, I'm very much so into. When I had the concept for this idea, which I actually had the concept for the product line before I knew I was going to pursue Where's Blade. But once I decided, hey, I'm going to do this product line that is all about retro JTTRPGs, two games came to mind first, like immediately. I think Where's Blade was the first one, but maybe that's revisionist history. Maybe I wanted to be the first one since I announced it. But it was Where's Blade and Wizardry. Those are two games that mean something to me. I think they embody the Japanese TTRPG spirit of the 80s and 90s. It made sense that I have one of those as the inaugural entry in this Legends of Japan product line. So I reached out. I did like a cold email to the folks at Shindosha about Where's Blade, and it was one of the faster responses that I've ever gotten doing this. Like sometimes I'll get fast responses when I cold email someone. I'm like, hey, I want to localize your game. Let's talk. Smaller designers are very quick to respond. Like, hey, yes, let's talk. And that makes a lot of sense, right? Like they want to get the exposure and they're hungry for it. So they are very quick to jump on it. Other large companies, obviously, not as incentivized and they're slow or they don't respond at all. The Where's Blade folks at Shindosha, it was like the next night, I want to say. I think I emailed them at 11 p.m. one night, and then they got back to me. No, hold on. I did email them at like 11 p.m. one night. I went to bed. When I woke up and looked at my phone finally, it was like 8:30 a.m. and they had responded back. So it took them like 9.5 hours to get back to me. And they were pretty much like, we'll sort out the details, but yes, yes. Let's figure out how to make this happen. And they have been awesome along the way. My first meeting with them was 3 hours long, I want to say. And just super, super nice dudes. Very much so into Where's Blade, as you can imagine. When I first met with them, it's funny. They kind of they put together almost like a sales pitch about like why Where's Blade is awesome and why I should publish it. And I just wanted to be like, guys, you don't need to sell me on anything. I'm already sold. We're doing it. If you're in, I'm in. I am trying to sell you on this idea. So, it was a very mutual, we were both very into the idea, and here we are. Now, the tricky part was once we got past those initial negotiation conversations to figure out contractually what this thing was going to look like, we then got into the nitty gritty of, okay, there are a lot of Where's Blade games. A lot of Where's Blade books. They said to me, what do you want? We're willing to give you whatever you want, but how do you want to approach this? And I think they thought I was going to talk about the mid 2000s D20 Where's Blade. When they tried to revitalize the brand using that D20 system. I think it was in 2008. It just didn't work. But I think they thought that's what I was going to request. And, I told them no, no offense, but I don't want that book. But I do want the original books. And they were like, well, we thought maybe you'd want the D20 version. Cause it's fresher, it's newer. Assets are easier to find and, art's a little better, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, no. You're missing the point. I want this stuff as looking like it just came out of a time machine from anywhere between 86 and 94. And I just want it, boom, right there for players to check out. This is such an iconic game that we never got in the West. It's like, I don't want to mess with what made this game so magical in the first place. Like, a game doesn't go on to spawn a multimedia empire that spans all of these different mediums if it's not great as it is. So to them, I was like, I just want the original game. That's what I want. I want the original game, and I want all those supplements, baby. And then ultimately, we landed on publishing the 1994 version of the book. So, game was released. First book was released in 86. Released periodically through the 80s, early 90s, and then they did kind of this like a rebrand in 1994, where they created the Where's Blade Renewal book. That's what the book is called. It's Where's Blade Renewal. It's not really a renewal in the truest sense. It is a kind of a definitive edition of everything that came before it, and they just throw it into one book. And so once we started talking about that, and I was really looking at the renewal book, I did finally land on like, okay, the renewal book is the way to go. That's where I want to start. And, you know, part of what I love about the renewal book, and I've talked about how this is part of my process in past LionWing Talks, is I love the art. I love the art of the renewal book. I love the art of like all of Where's Blade, especially some of the supplement books, like those early 90s supplement cover arts are just breathtaking stuff. It's, you know, it's art that just is not made anymore. The renewal book had that kind of art, and I was like, I think I want to go with renewal just because like I'm attracted to that cover art. But anyway, so that's a little bit about how that project came to be. I have not been keeping up on the chat here. I tend to do that a little bit. Let's see here. Let's catch up. Someone said, tuned into the showcase for SMT, but actually came away even more excited for Kedamono Opera. Awesome. Kedamono Opera. Oh, people are going to love that game. So, you know, we haven't talked a lot about that game, even though it's our next Kickstarter, because we don't want it to get lost in the shuffle. It's okay right now if not a lot of people are talking about Kradia or even Where's Blade, because those projects are a little farther off. So they don't need the attention right now. And so they can be overlooked a little bit because I know that we're going to have a marketing blitz for both of those games as we get closer to the release. Kedamono Opera is coming so soon that I didn't want to talk about it too much because I want to give it its moment to shine. It needs its moment in the sun, and I can't do that right now because, rightfully so, SMT is what everyone's talking about. But shortly, we will be really diving in and marketing heavily Kedamono Opera. It is our summer Kickstarter, so obviously marketing is going to start sooner rather than later. I'm really excited to show people that game. If you haven't checked out the backer kit landing page, go do it. You can just go to the LionWing website, lionwingpublishing.com. There's a link right in the nav bar at the top that says Kedamono Opera. Click it, takes you right to the backer kit page. You can sign up to get notified when the campaign launches, but it's also going to give you a rundown on what the game is. Mechanically, tonally, thematically, all that good stuff. And then it's going to show you some of the art. So check that out. Really excited. I'm glad Ravenfall, you showed up for SMT and then walked away really jazzed about Kedamono. Let's see here. Barking Alien, getting back to what we were talking about. I collect Japanese TRPGs. Excellent. I think diversity is key, and one of the best things about Japanese TTRPGs. They range in genre and tone so wildly. They're all different. Yeah. Yeah, you know, there was I'm going to sound like such an old man, but there was a level of what I can only call magic happening in Japan in multimedia from like 84 to 98, I would say, across various mediums, video games, anime, manga, tabletop games, where the stuff that they were producing at that time was so vastly different from what was happening in the West. Mashing up genres, very interesting art styles that were not always like super anime looking. Trying to tackle tried and true genres, gameplay conventions and figuring out how to put unique spins on them and succeeding more than failing, and succeeding where others, especially Western designers, didn't succeed. And so it was just that awesome stretch of almost 15 years that I consider kind of like the golden era of Japanese multimedia. That's like peak stuff across all of those mediums that I talked about. And of course, JTTRPGs being one of them. I mean, if you just look at Where's Blade, for instance, like Where's Blade's setting in and of itself is so incredibly distinct. Like it's part swords and sorcery, it's part diesel punk. People are casting magic, but then there are also like robots and gears, like it's just very fascinating world building that you actually don't really see today. Don't get me wrong, the multimedia that's happening today is awesome too. It's got its own merits. It stands on its own merits. It does stuff that could have never been done in the past, and it's awesome for that. I'm not someone who totally lives in the past or anything, so don't think that. But certainly the stuff that was happening during those years that I mentioned, mid 80s to mid to late 90s, was just has never been replicated. So it's cool to then take our Legends of Japan line and be able to show people like, hey, this is what you missed out on. Like this was a thing that existed in real time that affected people's lives, and you never knew about it. Not of any fault of your own at all, because you were residing in a different part of the world, and the TTRPG space was just vastly different than it is now. And so not very often do we get a chance to step back in time. This is one of those chances. So yes, I agree. They very diverse and far-reaching. Project Keys not being Kingdom Hearts, then drinking from the Kingdom Hearts mug. So I'm not going to lie, JLGD, I did do that on purpose for that very reason. There was a lot of conversation in the Discord about Project Keys and people thinking that it was a Kingdom Hearts thing. I could have chosen any mug. People have seen me on camera with lots of different mugs. So I have lots of different mugs. I chose this one specifically tonight, just as like a little troll. Just a little light troll. Okay. Can I has Where's Blade? You can has Where's Blade in about a year. Someone asked in Discord today, like, can someone give me details on Where's Blade? And we're not going to talk about the details just yet, just because I do have a rollout plan. And that rollout plan does not start in March of 2024. That'll be toward the end of the year. But I will say, sometimes the best way that I think about Where's Blade is just like, it's a heavy crunch game. A type of crunch, again, that just you don't see a lot of anymore. Because I think people have gotten scared off of crunch. Crunch defined the genre for decades, right? And then I think people realize, like, okay, the genre, some people say it's a genre, some people say it's a medium, whatever. I think it can be both, or it can be neither. It wasn't growing though. And I think people realize, like, okay, maybe we need to start looking inwardly. Like maybe TTRPGs aren't growing because of something we're doing. And I think people saw like, crunch is probably one of the things that are keeping people away. Not to say that there aren't very crunchy games still today, and there are not very crunchy games that are wildly successful. There totally are. I just think people realize, like, if TTRPGs are going to grow and evolve, they needed the change, and they did. Okay. What else we got here? Okay. Sorry. This is, dead air. It's great audio, let me tell you. Someone said the Where's Blade mecha designs are freaking amazing. Yeah, and I would say even that's an understatement. I can't really, they're kind of diesel punk, but that doesn't get at the heart of what their designs really are. Like, you could tell the designers and artists on Where's Blade were just so completely uninterested in fitting anything into a nice little genre box. Like, they just did not give a fuck Like they weren't like, okay, let's put mechs in our game, but we want them to be Gundam mechs, or we want them to be more Western mech warrior mechs, battle tech. Like you could tell, like they did not care. They're like, let's take the idea of robots, let's just make them make sense in our world, and then we get the Where's Blade mechs. So some of the best TTRPG books I've ever seen is stuff like the old Bubblegum Crisis game. Those old 80s and 90s books are amazing. Yeah. You know, Bubblegum Crisis gets a shout out on our Discord way more than I ever thought it would. I love Bubblegum Crisis. Okay. I think I'm almost caught up on everything. Have you explained Dark Keys yet? I have not explained Dark Keys yet. I'm kind of waiting for someone to take a good guess as to why I chose that name. So all of our projects get code names, and like most companies have code names for projects that they use internally. I've always liked to be forward facing with my project names, and I kind of make a little game out of it. When we got a project coming up and we have an announcement, I'll drop the code name of the game in the chat and try to see if people can guess it. I think there's only been one time that someone actually guessed right. I think that's accurate. So Dark Keys was SMT Tokyo Conception's code name, and there has been scuttlebutt about what Dark Keys might be referencing. Yeah, I'll talk about that someday. I will talk about that someday. Okay. Caught up there. The code name for SMT was Dark Keys, Project Dark Keys. Yes, indeed. All right, so let me pull up the Discord. Got some questions in here. Here we go. Okay. As someone who's read a fan translation of the Digital Devil Story novel, which kicked off Megaton, I'd love to see some older tabletop material if it's compatible with the same system as Tokyo Conception. Yeah, so there are definitely books that came before Tokyo Conception. Like I said, so the product line kicked off in 94. Tokyo Conception came out in Japan in 2004. So there was 10 years of books that came out during that time. So there's lots of cool stuff that's out there. Honestly, though, I don't remember who I was talking to about this. Maybe it was in private, or maybe it was someplace else. Maybe it was in the Discord with a bunch of people. But I actually sought out the SMT RPG series, not for Tokyo Conception. I always knew that Tokyo Conception was going to be the first book. It had to be. But the books that came after Tokyo Conception, those are what I think about when I think of the SMT RPG series. Like Mato Tokyo, 2000X is that book and its supplements are the reason why I wanted this series. So I went into the negotiating table knowing for me, Tokyo Conception was going to be the thing that got me to talk to them about Mato Tokyo. So there's a bunch of stuff that came before Nocturne and Tokyo Conception, and there's a bunch of stuff that came thereafter. Fun little factoid. Okay, so some people asked in the Discord about the Quick Play series. So our Legends of Japan line is our first of two product lines. It kicks off next year with, of course, Where's Blade's release. But then our second product line, which probably should be our first because it launches this year in 2024. It launches in like 4 months, actually. So that product line is called our LionWing Quick Play series, and our LionWing Quick Play series is a product line of RPGs that are almost exclusively meant to get people into the medium or into the TTRPG genre. So these are very quick playing books, not at the sacrifice of depth. I don't want people to think that. I think sometimes people hear accessibility and they're like, okay, well, like that's probably only for new people, and there's probably not that I can glean from it if I've been around for a while. But that's not what I'm talking about here. These are books that do a nice job of kind of like straddling those populations of people who very much so know TTRPGs and play them regularly, and those who have never touched them before. But the idea ultimately that formed my concept for the Quick Play series was, hey, I want to grow the genre. I want to grow the medium. I want to get more people playing this. I want to get more people playing TTRPGs. Since we are housed in the manga section in bookstores, we are, and even in our marketing, we don't necessarily market toward tabletop people. Like when I look at like our Facebook ads, for instance, and I look at our Tokyo Conception ads, and we've got various different demographics that we market to. And this is really no different for SMT than it was any of our previous TTRPGs. And that is most of our fan base are actually not traditional like gamers. They are either not at all or casually into it. Now, that's not to say that we don't have a nice, sizable chunk of folks who love TTRPGs and love tabletop games and show up for our stuff. We definitely have a very healthy portion of those folks, which I love. The diehard fan is fantastic. We just happen to have a whole lot of people who don't typically play games play our games. So, when we got picked up by Diamond, my one like condition for them is like, I will follow your lead on anything, Diamond. You know best, except I know best when it comes to who I'm marketing to. Put me in the manga section. Please, when you talk to these booksellers, like tell them I have to be in the manga section. So since we're there, I thought with the Quick Play series, someone who doesn't play games is not necessarily going to want to play a game when they're looking for their manga. And they're especially probably not going to want to play if their preconceived notions about TTRPGs is like these huge sprawling things that are expensive and take a lot of investment, take a lot of time and require big groups of people to play. And there's all these logistics to figure out. And it's just like a shit, absolute clusterfuck of having to do a bunch of stuff just to be able to enjoy the game. Like most people don't want to do any of that. Like, especially people who don't play a lot of TTRPGs or play any TTRPGs. They don't want to deal with any of that shit. So for me, it's like, all right, so how do I get them invested? Like, how do I speak to them? What's the language they need to hear from me? And that's when I kind of came up with low cost, low page count, low complexity, high accessibility. These are short games. Sometimes, and this even happens to me as someone who plays a lot of TTRPGs, as someone whose like primary game has almost always been Shadowrun. Like I like crunchy stuff. I love Shadowrun. But even I'll go to my my FLGS and I'll be looking just at the RPGs and I'll see something that I haven't heard of before. And I'm like, hey, I either like that name or I like that spine art or I like the logo. Like, let me check this thing out. But then like I pick it up and I'm like, this thing is massive. I don't have time for this shit. Like, I don't know who has time for this. So I wanted to make sure that the Quick Play series games are very, very thin, very quick to get through. You can learn the game in about 10 minutes, or you can learn the game as you play it. And so Steam Build Riders, that's our first entry into that series. And Steam Build Riders is all the things that the Quick Play series is. It's a short, snappy game, quick rules, easy rules to learn. It's just for 2 players. The GM takes an active part in the gameplay because they're most of the game is about like building these rally machines and then racing them or getting involved in like heists and whatnot. You're driving a whole lot, right? And you're like tweaking your machines to make sure they're driving at their optimal levels. The GM rides shotgun in all of these driving episodes. So even like looking at a game that has both players very involved was like a critical component, especially of the first release. Like the first release lays the foundation and tells people what this product line is going to be. And so Steam Build was it's all of that. It's a short game. You get through it quickly. It's fun to play. It's very replayable. It's got just lots of dice chucking. It's got almost like a board gamey type feel to it, which I also liked a whole lot. And it's all about just action. That Steamboat Riders is a very, very fast game, and very rarely are you bored spending a lot of time doing not fun tasks. It's just trying to get you into the story as quickly as possible, and its backdrop and what's included in the book really gives you a nice sandbox to play in, to create these really just wild stories. So that's the Quick Play series, Gateway RPGs. Someone asked about what's the release schedule for these. So these are once a quarter. So you will get a new Quick Play series book 4 times a year. That starts in Q3 of this year with Steamboat Riders, and then we've got our Q4 release, which will be coming out right around the holidays, which I'm very excited about. People are going to like that. And then every quarter thereafter in 2025 and beyond. So I will say this is also with the Quick Play series, because they tend to be shorter books, this is also our opportunity to continue to work with indie designers. A lot of indie RPGs from Japan are short books. And at this point, it doesn't make a lot of sense for us to be taking those books to Kickstarter. There was a time when that made sense for us. It doesn't anymore, but it's like, I still want to work with the designers. I'm plugged into that scene. I know a lot of the designers at this point. We've got a good reputation with those folks, and I want to continue to spotlight their stuff because it's cool shit. So the Quick Play series serves 2 purposes. It allows me to get books in front of people who would never play RPGs otherwise, but it also allows me to work with these awesome designers who are doing these really cool projects, these very creative, distinct games, and it gives us a chance to shine a spotlight on those folks. And a healthy Japanese TTRPG scene is good for the rest of the world, and it's good for LionWing. And any part that I can play in helping keep that scene healthy, I want to do my part. So quarterly releases. That's that. Someone else asked, can you tell us about the Quick Play series? I think I just did. What's the price going to be for the Quick Play series again? Around $20. Yeah. So it's anywhere between $12.99 and $19.99 will be the price there. So we wanted to keep the cost down. Life's expensive these days. Not everyone has $50 to drop on a book. But those same people who can't justify that purchase, I want to still be able to give them a game to play. And so investing in a $12 or $13 book, at least for me, feels a whole lot better than investing in a $50 book if I'm already strapped for cash. So, hopefully, lowering the barrier to entry there, which is the price point, will also get people on board with these things. And it also people, sometimes I think people want to play RPGs and they're not put off by, book size or complexity or all those other things I talked about, but they might just be like, I don't know if I want to take the risk on something for $50 or $40. I don't know if I want to spend $40 on this book, on this RPG, especially if I haven't played a lot of RPGs or I've never played one that I might not even like. However, I will say that the risk feels considerably more tolerable if it's like, okay, I only have to spend like $12 on this thing. If I don't like it, like, no one wants to be out $12, but I'd rather be out $12 than $40. So that's the pricing structure for the Quick Play series. They will not go over $20. We, at least right now, so we've already got releases through the end of next year lined up, and none of those releases are beyond $20. Another thing about the Quick Play series is we want these books to be low in player count as well. So most of the books that we have lined up, almost all, though not all, but almost all have a solo play variant. One book is actually just a solo game. It's only for one person. But if it doesn't include a solo play mode, then it's just 2 people. We have a player and a GM book like Steamboat Riders coming, but then we've also got GM-less books coming. I think we do have a book that is good for 4 players, but can be played with as few as 2. So we really want to lessen the burden having to get together a huge group to be able to play these things. Sometimes people who aren't into the genre, but one of the reasons they might not be into the genre is because they don't have friends who are into the same stuff or who care about tabletop games or don't care about TTRPGs. And so it's like they're thinking, I would love to play one of these, but I'm not going to go down to the game shop and put myself out there and play with a bunch of strangers because, like, I'm not comfortable with that. So these books can be a great opportunity for them to still get that fill, but only have to find maybe one other friend or no one else, and they can just play the game by themselves. So there you have it. I have not checked on the chat in a while. Let's see what's going on here. So someone's talking about SMT and things that are exciting to them, like the alignment, demon negotiation. Yeah, demon negotiation, demon fusion is really cool. Takeda-san did a really nice job of making this game make sense for the tabletop. Not all tabletop games are great adaptations, you know. Their video game counterparts just, it doesn't work in the conversion to the tabletop. This is one of those games where the designer Takeda-san, and probably a testament to just his knowledge and his longevity in the RPG space, the TTRPG space, is just like a testament to his skill because this game really captures the essence, the mechanics, the flow, the feel of SMT and of Nocturne specifically very well. And you can see that, you know, on down to, you know, the fan favorite mechanic of demon negotiation. So someone said, I'm loving the quick play concept. Thank you. It's awesome to hear. Does that mean these books would be more likely to feature D6s? Yeah. I mean, a lot of Japanese TTRPGs are already D6 systems. So like, it's not like they're, if a game's not in a quick play series, there's a very good likelihood that's still going to be a D6 game. That's what I'm trying to say. It just tends to be the Japanese go-to for tabletop systems, D6s. You will see some D10 stuff. I mean, Where's Blade is a D10 system. One of our previous releases, Convictor Drive, was a D10 system. So that definitely exists. But a lot of the quick play series will be D6 systems just because it's a much more manageable dice system to use for people who don't know much about TTRPGs. Someone said Gun and Gun 2. No Gun and Gun 2. I know some people were looking forward to that. It never feels good to disappoint people, you know, and not announce stuff that people want you to announce. But yeah, no Gun and Gun 2 right now. Don't know if it's been asked already, but how can I contact the translators, writers about potential weirdness I saw in some of the preview images? So I will say this. If you're talking about the SMT, like mock-ups, I wouldn't pay attention to those at all. None of that stuff. Okay, so some of that stuff isn't even real. It's just placeholder stuff that we cobbled together. And then some of it has not been proofed at all. It's just mocked up, put on a render, and it illustrates what the page is going to look like. You know, you look at the bestiaria pages or whatever, the demon pages, and like not all of that stuff is finalized, but you get to see how it's going to look in the book when it is finalized. So, so if you wanted to contact folks, I would just say, ask about it in the server, and one of the translators is probably watching. Noelle was in here earlier. Noelle's the translator on Tokyo Conception. So she's the best person to talk to there. But I also wouldn't spend, honestly, any time. I wouldn't spend 60 seconds of your time looking at those things and trying to find errors or typos and then trying to report those things because either A, they're not real, or B, you know, those renders were made so long ago that text has been long since updated. Let's see here. Someone else said the Mono Tokyo book is the one they've been dying to play as well. So yes. If people want to contact Atlas or Sega, I would say talk about Mono Tokyo. Okay. Yes, Nocturne's errata is incorporated for sure. Yep. Takeda-san would have had it no other way. I wouldn't have had it any other way. That's a great part about being able to work on an older game that's had plenty of years for people to like pick out the discrepancies and inaccuracies and errors. We get to present kind of a definitive edition of that book. So, okay. I know you are scaling back board games, but said you're interested in more small scale stuff like DDO. Any more news on that side? So DDO is Dungeon Dice Online, which I was very pleased to see that the designer is launching a Kickstarter for DDO. I think it's only going to be in Japanese. I haven't heard of any English localizations for that project. But I would love to work on DDO and games of similar size. DDO is a very small, very compact. I mean, like literally small. Card game, not a lot of components. One of the reasons why I wanted to get away from board games isn't just because I play TTRPGs and so I wanted to be working in the stuff that I play and that excites me. But also one of the reasons is board games are just like crazy expensive to produce. The profit margins are like incredibly slim. Unless you're, going to Kickstarter and you are hitting several hundred thousands of dollars, you're not making much money. It's not a sustainable business model. The company will eventually fold. So I had to get away from that stuff just for survivability purposes. So I don't necessarily plan on going back to big board games. I mean, Wild Hunt Festival will be a big project, but it's also our most successful Kickstarter project, and is the board game that people wanted the most. So that's why we're returning to it, even though it's going to be, a bigger financial investment and financial endeavor than I would typically want to be doing with a board game. But you certainly won't see many of those. But small stuff, I'm definitely open to stuff that I can just print and run a pre-order campaign or put it on the LionWing shop. That's the stuff I'm interested in at this point for board games, because I'm not gonna use a Kickstarter slot for board games anymore. I mean, it would have to be the right board game, but like the Kickstarters that we have planned through 2026, none of those are board games. Even Wild Hunt Festival is going to be a Game Found campaign. So there you have it. Do all of the S&T RPG books use the same basic rule system? More or less, with lots of shades of gray there. Yeah, Noel said we actually found a few errors that still hadn't been eroded. And Noel found those in her translation and had a whole list of questions that we put to Keda, and he made sure to answer those things. So, okay. I think the last question that I got in the Discord, really random. But hey, I welcome any question. They even say, hey, this is very random, but what's your go-to gaming controller? I'm assuming you mean like controller. And it is probably my Victress, which I don't even take the plastic off the sides because I love this controller so much. I don't want to dirty up the grip right here where my hand is. So like I've been playing. So I got this controller right when it came out. I've been playing with the plastic on the side ever since. This is my favorite controller. I do have a Nikon as well, which is like a super slick controller. I like it. It's just like, it's mega heavy. I don't like heavy controllers. I got enough wrist issues that putting excess load on my wrist as I'm playing is never any good. It just agitates my tendency to, my proneness to RSIs. So, but I love this controller's buttons. They're massive and they have very low force to press them. So really helpful for people who have wrist issues, RSI issues, or have had RSIs in the past and have recovered from them. Buttons like this are like a godsend because they're so light. You don't have to press very hard to get them to register. So anyway, that's that. Okie dokie. So, gone through everything. We've been here an hour. It's 11 o'clock. I am going to get to the final bit of today. So LWM, it's been in the Discord for a long time. People have wondered what it is. People have taken lots of many great guesses at what it is. Some people have gotten it right. I kind of. So, 'tis the time. Drum roll, please. There we go. LionWing Monthly. So, but there's a caveat. LWM had two meanings. Had two meanings this time. So, LionWing Monthly and the LionWing Magazine. Let's talk about what those are. People want supplements, right? It's one of the things that I hear about and also just see, especially with Japanese TTRPGs. They're pretty big financial investments, right? And so typically someone will release a core rule book, but then they won't revisit that with any more supplements. There are a multitude of reasons why that could be. Sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes. It can be that the financial investment is just too great to mess with the supplements. You know, I mean, the people who return for a supplement for any book, Japanese TTRPG or Western RPG or otherwise, the people who return for a second book, especially a supplement, is a fraction of the people who showed up for the first book. I mean, a fraction. I'm talking low double digits who show up. So the easy math that I always tell people is if 100 people buy your core rulebook, expect 10 to buy your supplement. That's not an exaggeration. That's generally the rule of thumb. That's the ratio. The people who show up for a supplement tend to be in the ballpark of 5 to 20%. Kind of hard to pin down. I mean, I know that's a big range there, 15%. But it all kind of depends on the project and whatnot. And certainly some projects will exceed 20%. You'll have a pretty big return rate of 30%, 35%. If you're really lucky, maybe you'll get 40%. But I mean, I have access to any and all TTRPG book that is currently on store shelves or on virtual or, on proverbial store shelves, like on Amazon, and any book that's been released at retail for the past 15 years. I have all of those numbers. It's one of the beauties of working with the distributors. You get access to software where you can look up other titles, see sales figures, and create comps. That's what it's all there for. Not so that you can spy on other people's sales figures, but so that you can figure out your own damn comps for your own books. So I see those numbers, and the percentage holds true. So the law of diminishing returns is fully in effect there. So just not financially viable, like at all. However, I think supplements are important, especially for games whose core rulebooks really perform well. There are plenty of supplements for Japanese TTRPGs, even those that we have released, that have supplement books. And right now, it would make sense to release those supplements as entire books. The financial investment is just a poor business move. However, I still want supplemental material, content for our stuff. So LionWing Monthly will be our opportunity to release single supplement scenarios for a lot of our games. so that people are still getting additional content. People can still play in these worlds that they love. We can still bring those things out, and we can just break even on it. And we don't have to lose money on producing a supplement that's not going to sell, a supplement book that's not going to sell. We're going to do this through a Patreon, thus the LionWing monthly thing. And so through LionWing monthly, we'll have different tiers, and we'll talk about all these tiers and go into details when we're ready to show all of that, which will be in the not too distant future, certainly in the next couple months. But it'll be an opportunity to get supplemental content. It'll be an opportunity to get some swag, get some LionWing swag. It'll be an opportunity to get beta access to some of our stuff way early. All of this is going to be priced fairly because I look at the Patreons that I subscribe to, and I'm usually backed at a fairly lower tier, and I just kind of assume that's most people. So I'm not looking to price gouge anyone on this, but there will be tiers in case you're like, hey, I want this additional content and it's in this tier and that makes sense for me and my budget. I'm doing that. We'll have plenty for you. If you're looking to spend some money, we got you. Part of one of the tiers for the LionWing monthly for the Patreon is going to be our LionWing magazine, which is going to come in digital form and print form. I mean, I grew up in the era of magazines. I think magazines are fantastic. Still to this day, I find magazines relevant. I have subscriptions to White Dwarf and Star Wars Insider and Retro Magazine. I love magazines still to this day. So with LionWing being my company, I'm like, well, I want to do something that speaks to me, that I like. So I'm going to do a magazine. It'll be a quarterly magazine. I'm not doing a monthly magazine. That is not financially sound, but a quarterly magazine is very doable. So that'll be one of the tiers. You don't have to jump in at the physical magazine level. You get a reduced rate for the digital one. Spread across the magazine and just traditional Patreon will also be two specific things. In addition to additional content for our games and whatnot, we will also be releasing 2 games that will at minimum be LionWing monthly first and LionWing magazine first games. We are creating internally a skirmish game, sort of like anime Warhammer Light. That skirmish game is called Runelance. And then we are working with some Japanese designers and Japanese artists on our first internally developed TTRPG, which I'm not going to reveal that just yet. We're kind of putting the finishing touches on that. But we are, I'm working with a pretty prominent 80s and 90s illustrator. He did a lot of cover art for Super Famicom games. Who's going to be doing a lot of the art. He's still illustrating. He's in his mid-70s. And he'll be doing the art for this specific TTRPG that we're designing. His art will be featured on the magazine. It'll probably be the cover art in many cases. In the magazine will also be some additional things. It won't just be our games. Sometimes it'll be the supplements released in physical form. Those will be put to the magazine. Some people love having a physical representation, right? Like me. And so some of the stuff that we're releasing digitally through our Patreon will also find its way in physical form in the print magazine. We'll also be having Japanese design interviews, Japanese design diaries, translation diaries, probably some reviews here and there, some retrospectives. I'll be doing some moratoriums on some of our past projects. I'll be doing it in kind of like long form editorial fashion. And so it's going to be a mixture of behind the scenes stuff in the Japanese development scene, behind the scenes stuff on the LionWing team, in addition to content for games that already exist, as well as brand new games, including our own. So yes, that is LionWing Monthly and the LionWing magazine. Someone said, anime Warhammer Light, you have my attention. Yeah, so Runelands is that game. I'm not doing miniatures. I am doing standees. I got enough miniatures in my life. I don't want any more. I know some people love miniatures. I do too. That's why I got so many, but that's also because I love them. That's why I can't have any more. And I assume other people are like that. Standees are, for me, perfectly fine, especially of the acrylic variety. Acrylic standees look super slick. I love acrylic standees. I also have acrylic standees. I've got a lot of them, but I've got way more room for those than miniatures, it seems. So we're going to be going that route. It also saves on cost. If this is being a like a Patreon exclusive or a LionWing magazine exclusive game, at least originally, I'm not printing miniatures. I've done enough stuff over the course of LionWing's existence where I've subsidized a bunch of cost and lost a bunch of money in the process of it. I'm just no longer about that life. So I got to think about these things strategically, financially. Acrylic standees. Okay, Runelands. Episode 0 will be available to everyone. You will not have to be a Patreon. You will not have to subscribe to our Patreon or to the LionWing magazine to check out what Runelands is. So episode 0, which is called The Conflict at Bucksbridge Pass, will be available to everyone. It'll be a short scenario. You'll be able to play with 2 of the armies, kind of get a feel for what the game's about. That game, as well as our internally developed TTRPG, will be episodic. So, each month or every other month or quarterly, whatever that release schedule ends up being, you'll be able to follow along with the story, get new scenarios to play, new armies to play with, new units for your armies that you love, all that good stuff. In addition to new scenarios and content for our TTRPG. So, that's LionWing Monthly and LionWing Magazine and LWM. I guess I could finally change the LWM moniker in Discord. I saw a bunch of great guesses about what it might mean, like LionWing Media. Really great guess. I think I saw a LionWing manga somewhere in there. We definitely, in the future, will be exploring more media tie-ins, specifically manga. But I'm not really at a place where I can even talk intelligently about what that will really look like for LionWing. But it's something that I'm definitely interested in further pursuing, just to ensure that the company is always financially stable, And so the more avenues and the more mediums that you have, the more ability you have to diversify your cash flow and your capital. And that's good. Because sometimes tabletop games sell really well and sometimes they don't. And you got to make sure that when they don't, you're subsidizing that with some other kind of financial avenue. So that's that. Probably not LionWing movies. That would be cool. So someone mentioned LionWing Mobile. That actually is something that I have been talking internally about for like 2 years now. I do want to have a LionWing app. So that is definitely a thing. That just requires a lot of time. It requires a lot of resources, financial mostly. And I haven't really been in a position really until recently to do something like that. Oh, cool. I'm out of focus. That looks great. But yeah, so that is definitely a LionWing app is something that I'm very interested in checking out. For sure. Okay. Someone said I can't paint minis. My hands are too unsteady. I painted a lot of minis in my life. I just don't want to paint anymore, to be frank. And it's like, I don't have the time. I don't have the interest in investing the time to do it anymore. I'm pulled in 1,000 different directions. It's like, I don't want to spend what little free time I do have painting miniatures anymore. I did that when I was like 22. That was cool. I'm not 22 anymore. So, and that takes us to the end of LionWing Talks, episode 38, A Blast from the Past. Hopefully you enjoyed yourself. Hopefully my rambling was somewhat coherent, and hopefully it was somewhat interesting. We do these shows pretty irregular anymore. I used to do them weekly, and then it moved to monthly, and now it's like whenever I feel like it. But as I have said in the past couple episodes at the end, I want to continue to do these things. I'm not committing to any kind of schedule anymore with these LionWing Talk shows, but definitely I will be back for another one. You can count on that. And as we get closer to Tokyo Conception's launch, and as we get closer to Where's Blade, and our fall Kickstarter, we will be doing some kind of like roundtable discussions looking at the internal process for these games. So we pulled the curtain back a couple times with Pickrest Roman and our board game or card game Gun and Gun, where I sat down with the graphic designer and we just went through what the localization process was like for that particular project. We got really great feedback. I think we may have done that for Embryo Machine as well. Regardless, we did do it for Embryo Machine. Regardless, we had great feedback on that kind of thing. We're going to continue to do that, especially, these projects keep growing in size and scale and all that good stuff. And so I think because of that, people are even more interested in the behind the scenes machinations of like, what goes into this stuff? What do you actually do? And I like to pull the curtain back on these types of things. Growing up, I played a lot of Sega Saturn. There was a localization company that ended up getting me interested in localization that I credit for LionWing's formation called Working Designs. And in the back of all of their Sega Saturn manuals, they may have had it in their PS1 manuals as well, though I can't quite recall that. The back of their Sega Saturn manuals, they always had their translation notes, and they pulled the curtain back on like what their process was like and what their translation like victories and setbacks were. And I loved that stuff as a kid, which was the genesis of why we started doing these video roundtable discussions. So we're going to continue to do that, especially for our bigger projects. LionWing Showcase 2 is happening this summer. LionWing Showcase 2 is going to detail this fall's Kickstarter, because we know the summer is Kedamono. What's the fall Kickstarter? As well as our second 2025 Kickstarter. We know one 2025 Kickstarter, Where's Blade? We don't know the other. In Showcase 2, we will also be showing off, I always just said the name of it, Quarter Fours, or the second entry in the LionWing Quickplay series. I think I'll probably also talk about the Legends of Japan survey results as well. So stay tuned for Showcase 2. Probably not as many announcements, but still at least 3. I might push it to 4. I'm not doing 5. 5 is just the straw that breaks the camel's back, as they say. So I'm not doing 5 again. If you haven't, and if you know Retro JTT RPGs, head on over to lionwingpublishing.com, our website. Along the top, under the resources category, there's a drop down that says the Legends of Japan Want List survey. Click that. If you know Retro JTT RPGs, go to that survey and tell us the Retro JTT RPGs you want us to translate and publish. We've got way more responses to that survey than I expected. Yeah, admittedly, I don't know what the market is for retro JTT RPGs. But like SMT, the turnout for that survey has been way more than I thought it would be. So I want to hear more people's ideas. As I mentioned, I think in the chat, or maybe it was in the after show, someone submitted a game as like one of the ones they'd like us to see. They'd like for us to localize and publish. And it's actually we already have the contract for it. So I'm not going to reveal what that is. And that will not be in Showcase 2. But someone's already got one. So that was cool to see. Let's see. I didn't look at the comments real quick on Working Designs. Yeah. Make sure I didn't miss anything here. Another Kratia trailer in the summer. Yeah, so almost all of these games will be getting new trailers when like their campaigns, their crowdfunding campaigns actually go up. The trailers that you saw in the showcase last week are mostly teasers. Now I reserve the right to not do that and just to roll with the trailers that we've got because I really like those trailers. But in my mind, we've got round 2 of trailers coming for Kedamono Opera and for Wild Hunt Festival. So, LionWing fans eating good the last couple weeks. Yeah, you know, hopefully. What's the year cutoff on that again? Noel asked, and I'm assuming you're talking about the Legends of Japan. So the soft cutoff is 2000, the year 2000. But I am looking at a game that was released in 2004 or 6. So like I'm willing to fudge the numbers a little bit there, but ideally these are things that release sometime in the 80s or 90s. Just because those are the books, those are the releases that I'm most interested in. I think I'd go back and fill that thing out another dozen times. Hey, I mean, feel free to. I don't know if Google Forms lets you do that. I haven't used Forms enough myself as like the scriber to know if you can do that or not. The summer of LionWing starts early. Yes, indeed. So it's going to be an exciting 2024 for us. Obviously, lots of releases coming between Fledgewitch, Eldritch Escape, Steamboat Riders, SMT, Q4 Quick Play series release, Kickstarter campaign for Kedamono Opera, Kickstarter campaign for Unannounced Project in the fall, crowdfunding campaign for Wild Hunt Festival Donkai Survey Brigade, and Wild Hunt Festival Anniversary Edition. Whoo! We're just turning that dial up to 11. It's like we're doing this thing. We were a company that released, 2 games a year, and then 2024 came along, and I guess at some point I had the great idea to say like, fuck it, let's release like 8 games. Let's just do 8. And here we are. Okay, that takes us to the end today. Thanks so much for joining us. Thanks for listening to me ramble for the past hour and a half. Hope you enjoyed it. We'll be back again sometime in the future, and I hope you join us then. Until next time, I'm Bradley Hailstorm. We're LionWing Publishing. We're bringing tabletop games to you from Japan. Farewell, everyone.